about Him. We live in a generation today, I think, that many of them believe that worship is about them. When I was pastor at First Baptist Pascagoula, we had some young folks that wanted to go to strictly contemporary music, or praise music, one or the other. And so I did a study on that. I told them, I said, our staff will do a study on this, and when we get through, we'll come back and give you a report. And so it took us several weeks, but we came back and gave a report. And I said, I want you to know that every time I stand up to preach, I'm preaching to at least 5 generations of people. I'm preaching to the World War II generation, that great generation. They grew up with hymns. And I'm also preaching to the baby boomers, of which I am one. And we too grew up with hymns. And then you get into the generation X's and all of that. And so we have 5 different generations, and every generation is partial to one kind of music or another. So I said, as long as I'm here, we're going to have a blended worship. That way we can make all of you mad at us equally at the same time. People choose churches today the way we choose a meal when we go through a buffet line. And I guess that's okay. But I'm here to tell you today that whether we sing out of the book or off the wall, our praise should be directed toward God. It is not about us, it is about Him. And we would do good if we could remember that. Now, life can be defined today as a concoction of many different things. For instance, there are things in life that are diabolically sour. I have lived long enough to experience some of those things. But there are also some things that we experience in life which are delightfully sweet. And so every single day of our lives, we're trying to walk a very narrow beam between things that are sour and things that are sweet. I think that's exactly what Isaiah faced in the text that I read to you just a moment ago. Something bad had happened in his life. The scripture says that it was in the year that King Uzziah died. Uzziah had been the king of Judah for 52 years. Now, I want you to plant that in your mind. If we have a president more than 4, we think that's too much. 52 years. And most of those years were prosperous. The stadium that, of course, was filled to capacity. And when the players started lining up, knocking each other down, he didn't know a thing about a quarterback, running backs, tight ends, guards. He didn't know anything about football. And so the American would look at him every now and then and could tell he was confused. So when the ball game was over, the American said to his Russian counterpart, "What did you think about the game of American football?" And the Russian said, "I have never seen such first-rate enthusiasm over such a second-rate game." Now, some of you might identify with that. Most of us like football. But you see, the knowledge of football that the Russian brought with him into the stadium that day limited and defined his appreciation of that game. I've had an opportunity to be in Paris 2 different times, and both of the times that I was there, I went to the Louvre. When I got inside the Louvre and when I saw all of these famous paintings, I'll have to tell you that I was inspired. Some of those paintings would cover this wall over here that Leo da Vinci did. And of course, you know the lady that I wanted to see in the Louvre. I wanted to see the Mona Lisa. I wanted to decide for myself if she were smiling or not. And so as I'm walking in this museum and I take a turn to the right, I see her hanging on the wall. I was not impressed with the size of the painting at all. It was just, maybe twice as big as an 8 by 10. It wasn't that big. And they had cords there. You could only go so close to it. And so I stood there, and I still don't know to this day if she was smiling or not. But there was a man who went into the museum one day, and he stood before the Mona Lisa, and he said to the guide, "I don't see anything unusual about this painting." And the guide said to her, said to him, "Sir, this painting is not on trial, but you are." Now, what was he saying? He was saying the knowledge of art that you brought with you into this museum limited and defined your appreciation of a masterpiece. Over 1 million spectators view that painting every single year at the Southern Baptist Convention in Dallas, Texas. We went to the JFK Museum as we were there, and as you go into that museum, they have all kind of videos of the assassination. And so you can see the actual assassination of the president. And I know when I viewed those videos again in 1985, that I had the same feeling in my stomach that I felt when I was 15 years of age, when the president was assassinated. I think that's the way Isaiah felt. If I lived till October of this year, I will have been in the ministry 59 years. And I can tell you I recognize the fact that almost every time I stand up to preach, there's somebody in the congregation that has a broken heart. There are broken-hearted people all over this world, in every church that I go into, in every city that I go into. I think about the fact that there are parents who are broken-hearted over their children, and I've had the responsibility to counsel some of them in my ministry. I had a lady in my office one time with tears streaming down her face. She was brokenhearted because of her daughter, who was beautiful and smart, had all kind of potential, and yet she was throwing it all away. She was wasting her life. She was on a dead-end road, and her mother was brokenhearted over that. And there are many parents today who are brokenhearted over their children. When I was at Pascagoula after Katrina, I had 2 funerals of unknowns. Nobody ever claimed them after that storm. I had people calling me. It was in the paper, it was in the Associated Press, it was on all of the news cables and all of the news channels. I had people calling me from other states wondering if it might be one of their children. Just think